Testing. There we go. Testing. There we go. Alright, sorry about that. We seem to be good now. Let's see. Testing. There we go. Alright, sorry about that. We seem to be good now. Let's see. Testing. Alright. Turn our ambient music back on and let's go ahead and get started. Hello, Vrukashada. Speed 9109, welcome. Alright, so the plan for today is to work on a couple things. One of them is this model builder extensions project that I have. And this is an EF Core utility that's out on GitHub. And I think there's a problem with it that I want to solve. So let's just verify if there is a problem. I think the easiest way to do that is going to be to create a new project. So let's create a new project for this. And do I have the clean architecture extension in here? I don't think I do. Let me go back. Let's see if I can install it. Extensions, online, search, clean. This one. Let's install that. And great, I have to restart everything. Why were the other videos deleted? Oh, you're talking about on Twitch? Twitch only keeps them for like 21 days because I'm not a Twitch partner or whatever. So if you want the archived videos, I upload them to YouTube. So they would be at youtube.com/c/Ardalis. And I probably ought to create a Twitch bot or something to tweet this out every now and then, but this is where they are, if that helps. So it's been a few weeks since I streamed. I had some vacation in there that got in the way and other stuff came up, so but now I'm back. Alright, so let's see, we're gonna try and do that, and I don't need that anymore. I was talking to some other people about some clean architecture things. Alright, so let's do that. Install my extension. So what this does is it gives you a solution starter kit, if it actually runs, that you can use for creating a new solution using the clean architecture template from GitHub. Let me turn on some lights here. That's probably a little better. Alright. There we go. Alright, so let's do Visual Studio again. Alright, and the tool that we're working with here is NuGet.org search and EF Core extensions by me. Apparently it's not. Yeah, I put a dot in there, I think. EF Core dot extensions. There it is. So I'm going to test this thing out. I think there's a problem with it that I want to fix. Okay, so that's EF Core extensions. I'll paste that in the chat as well. And so now we're going to create a new project. Wow, check out that inverted picture. Not sure why it did that. Alright, so this will be EF extensions test. Fine. I'm not planning on checking this one in, it's kind of a throwaway. I thought this would stay on top. I guess not. Oh well. Alright, so here is my app.db context. Alright, and I want to add, let me see what this extension does. Let's add another one of these and open that one up. I'm going to add the extensions to my new project that I just created. And what this is supposed to do is apply configurations from the current assembly. It's supposed to just automatically do that. All right, without me having to tell it, name of assembly or whatever. So I've got a to-do item here, and let's just say the to-do item has some, let's say title is required. All right, so let's go look at AppDB context, and let's do it first here just to get the syntax right. And this is on model creating that I want. And in here I want to say model builder dot entity of to do item. In here t such that t dot property of, that's not what I want. Does it go t dot? What was this, wasn't it? Let me go out to my docs. Do I have any docs on this? Right, okay, that's not quite enough. EF core configuration class. There. So let's grab the code that we need. The entity, alright, it's just open close on that, and then property. Got it. Alright, so the entity the open close dot property t such that t dot, let's say title dot is required. Right? So we want to say that. And if we say that and then we do a migration, what should happen is we'll see that this thing is not null. Now we want to put that into a configuration class, which is what this is talking about. So we're going to create a to-do item configuration that looks like this. In fact, we'll just copy this to get started. Okay, and so we need a new class, and this will be a to-do item configuration of type to-do item. Right, and we'll say builder dot property t dot title dot is required, and we can do other stuff like says dot has max oh, I did the wrong thing here. Hang on. There we go. Got overzealous. That's to do item. And that's to do item. That's to use entity type builder. Alright. So builder has property title is required dot has come on. There we go. Dot has max length title for a to do item. We'll say 100. Alright. Now this needs to be in its own file, so push it over into its own file, and now I no longer need on model creating. That can go away. Except that I want to use my extension method here. So my extension, once I pull in my thing, let's manage NuGet packages. Hey Ancient Coder, how's it going? We're going to browse for Ardalis. I'm going to pull in my EF core extensions, install it, and it's going to say no, you can't do this because some idiot used the super high version when they created that thing. That idiot would be me. Let's make this 2.2.6 and hope for the best. It's going to tell me now I have different versions. Alright, so I'll have to fix up clean architecture to be on 2.2.6, or I need to make, let's do that. This doesn't need to be. Let's go back to the other project, EF core extensions, and usually I like to have things run on the latest version, but Can I make this use an older version? Can I leave version out of it? Can I leave 2.2. star? How does that work? Anybody know? What are we working on? We're working on some specification stuff here in a few minutes, and right now this EF Core extensions package that I put out there, it's got a bug in it I need to repro and fix. So I think if I make this thing too low, it's going to start yelling at me that I have, you know, an old version, and it's going to say some security vulnerability exists or whatever. But just for now, I want it to match what I had here, I think. Well, alright, we'll only change it in one place for now. For now, we're going to say 226 is it. So we're going to use 226 everywhere. 226 for ASP.NET Core App, and 226 for EF Core Tools. Probably missing stuff. Let's do this Core App. I think was also in infrastructure. ASP.NET Core App 226. Okay, we should be good there. Now, just to be sure, we're going to manage these things for the solution, and it's going to tell me that I didn't get them all, and it's going to consolidate them for me, and I want them all to be 226. Alright, and it didn't work. Infrastructure 214 of EF Core Tools. EF Core Tools 226. Work. Specifying the version is not recommended. Yeah, that's fine. Net Core App, I gotta update that too. Alright. And I probably have a Net Core App on some tests. I do. Alright, so this guy also needs to be 2.2. And see how easy this is to just take care of this? These should all be 226 as well, I'm guessing. I ought to just grab Net Core App here too, I think. But there was some reason why I did it this way back when I set it up. Alright, getting closer. Boom. This is not helpful. That's standard 2, you're fine. Net Core App 2.2, you're fine. Net Core App 2.2, you're fine. Which leaves you, Net Core App 2.2. Now you're fine. And let's clean this thing. And then hope for the best. Unable to find testing. Test host. Alright, fine. Didn't like that. Let's go back out to the NuGet. What am I looking for? This one. Sorry about this, guys. This will just take me a minute to sort out these versions. Testing's latest version, well, it's got 3.0 previews. What did it have before that? 2.2.0. Alright, good enough. So we're going to use 2.2.0 for these. And it's still not doing what I want. Let's clean it again. And let's build it again. I obviously need to update clean architecture. Look at that, yay, it succeeded. Alright, now we're at the point where we can actually use my extension method. So over here it says, hey, on model creating, you should be able to do that. Apply all the configurations from the current assembly. And so on model creating, I should be able to do exactly that. And it's going to say, I don't know what you're doing, unless that's this. That'll help. And then it's going to say, hey, do you want that namespace? Right? Right? You can ask me for that namespace. Because, no, it never actually installed it. Hang on. Back to here. Back to here. Find my EF Core extension. Install it for real this time. Did it install it? Yeah, there it is. Alright, so now it's installed. Now, finally, drum roll, look at this. Yes, we can build the project with the extension method. It's amazing. Okay, so what's that supposed to do? Well, it's supposed to do what I say John Olson to Dapper EF Core. I mainly use EF Core. I would use Dapper if I need to write custom SQL, if I need to call, maybe if I need to call store procedure, although EF Core is good for that too. Or if I was writing an app where I didn't need to track state of entities at all, and I just needed to maybe work directly with a database, and everything's going through Sprox, then there's not a whole lot of point in using EF. But most of the stuff I write is business enterprise type software, and it has a domain model, and we make changes to the state of that domain model, and then we just say save, right? And we don't care about where it gets saved for the most part. It's more of a domain-centric architecture and view, and EF Core works really well for that. So, and so does this clean architecture here. So that's my day-to-day work, is using clean architecture and using EF Core, and it works really well, and you don't have to focus on the data access at all. Whereas with Dapper, you kind of do. All right. So I don't think this works. We're going to prove whether or not it works here in a second. Actually, let's go here. I need to run migrations for this. So I'm going to open up this folder, and we're going to go here, here. Running migrations, I have to know the syntax for. So we'll open up PowerShell here. I'll say .NET EF. There we go. Oh, we're running on preview. Okay, that should be fine. I'm going to say .NET EF migrations add, and this will add a migration, but I have to tell it a couple more things. So let's go grab some syntax for this. I happen to know I have some syntax for it on my eShop on Web project. What about the performance? Well, my first comment on performance is don't prematurely optimize for performance. Measure performance and make sure it's good enough for your use case, and then move on. Because generally you can always get more performance if you make your code more and more low level and more difficult to maintain. If you're just running direct SQL calls with EF Core and you're just hitting the EF Core database from SQL, it's going to be comparable to Dapper, and there's benchmarks and stuff you can find out there. If you're going to actually do an EF Core, track changes and let it generate the SQL and run it, then Dapper will probably be faster, because again, you're at a lower level, you're kind of hand rolling the SQL. And if you want to do a bulk operation, like I want to delete 100 records. Well, if you do it in a loop in EF and you load each entity and then you delete it and then you save changes, that's going to be way slower than if you just run a Dapper, delete statement. All right, so I want this essentially. So I need to tell it where the context is. That should be okay. I need -p for that. So let me just pull this up with that so I can get my syntax here. So .NET EF migrations add, and what's my path look like? Here's my path. So source, infrastructure, it's in there. So my infrastructure project looks like .add, let's say initial is the name of it, -p, source whack, clone architecture dot infrastructure whack clean architecture dot infrastructure dot project -s. Now we want the web project, which is going to be clean architecture dot web, same thing. All right, so -s is going to be what? And hit enter. -s dot whack source whack clean architecture web clean architecture web CS proj. Am I missing anything? Oh yeah, -o. Sure, let's do that too. Come on, come back. There we go. -o data web migrations. See if that works. Cannot execute because misspelled a built-in command. .NET EF does not exist. Okay, fine. Let's install EF. Install EF Core global tool. I thought I did this once already. I think it's this one. Install, what is it? .NET. Yeah. Now, do it. There we go. Alright, the application execute does not exist. Do I have to tell it a version? I think it's not liking the fact that I'm on a preview version. It's slowing me down. Veruca Shada, hosting .NET projects on AWS or Azure, what would you suggest? They're both good. You can do it on either one. I mostly use Azure for most of my clients, but I have clients that use AWS as well. I'm partial to Azure just because the tool stack that I use, which mostly involves Azure DevOps these days, tends to work well with Azure. Alright, I think I need to tell it the version of EF Core Global Tool. So .NET 3.0 preview EF .NET EF version. That one, right? So copy that version number. See if that helps. Normally you don't have to do this just because I have all this other stuff installed. Dash version. Dash version. Paste. Do it. It's already installed. Okay. Uninstall? Maybe? I don't know. How do you uninstall one of these tools? John started learning as an intern, scoping learning EF Core, and at this place they use Dapper. Seems more demanding when it comes to running SQL. Because of performance. I guess I'm also learning how EF Core works under the hood. You need to implement everything yourself. Yeah, the thing to remember is that performance is a trade-off. So it's easy, especially when you're new in your career, to think that, you know, the only thing that matters in any comparison of how I might do something is which one is faster. And you have to realize that hardware is cheap, and you know, if you can increase the performance by buying another server, that's often way cheaper than having a developer have to spend an extra 2 days trying to figure out how to make it faster and optimize it, you know, or have worse, like have your entire team have to work with low-level SQL statements everywhere instead of just using an abstraction like EF Core and now shipping, you know, a month earlier. And oh, it's not quite as performant. Well, you know, so what? Just, you know, crank up the power on the hardware and it's good enough. Or, you know, run some load tests, identify where the actual performance bottlenecks are, and fix just those spots, right? Because EF Core is really great for CRUD operations. Maybe it's not great for reports or certain other scenarios. So you find where those parts are where it isn't quite fast enough, and you focus your optimization efforts there, rather than making your entire project less efficient because you're working at a lower level, you know, to get better performance at the cost of lower productivity, right? Your team productivity is in balance with your application performance in many cases. All right, so that actually installed the right version of the tool. Let's see if this actually works. Not holding my breath. Boom, that's so close. We got a different error. Different error is progress. All right, why are you unhappy now? Unable to resolve, no database providers. Oh, yeah, that's my fault. I know what that is. Okay, so now let's go back to our code and let's give it a database provider, because this thing does not come out of the box talking to SQL Server. Startup. By default, it's talking to an in-memory database, but we're going to swap that out here. We're going to say Control KC. U, default connection. Let's just double check that default connection is talking to something I can do. Local DB v11. What have I got on this machine? Local DB MS SQL local DB. Let's do that one. So whack ms SQL local db, something like that. Is that, did I get it right? Looks right. Instead of this. I think I need a double slash to escape it. There we go. So that looks right. Alright, now let's try this one more time. Sorry this takes so much effort. Once you get it working now, it just works. So theoretically this will create some migrations. Oh, so close. Alright. Initialize using this provider in memory. Why are you doing in memory? I told you not to. Oh, it's because data is fed in DB context provided up DB context. Alright, did I miss another spot that's doing in memory? Configure services. Where? Startup, that's commented. This isn't a test. I'm not worried about that. Here we go. That's also in a test. Let me check this thing out. Didn't save oh, thank you. I'm an idiot. Frank. Appreciate it. Yeah, because I didn't think I needed to build. And usually Control-Shift-B is what does it for me. Alright. Save me some time there. Yay, look at that. I think it worked. Alright, so let's see what that did. So we created a migration up here. And what did it do? Well, it created a to-do items table. And in here you'll notice that there's an ID, a title, a description. Now what did I tell it to do? Over here, where is it? I think I dropped it right in to-do item configuration. I said, hey, make the title property required, that means not null, and give it a max length of 100. So what did we get though? Title property is nullable, and there's nothing here about its length. So it clearly did not work. Now how do I get this to work currently? Like, why aren't people telling me that my thing sucks and that it doesn't work? Well, it actually takes in an assembly, right? And so, is it possible to inspect the SQL EF queries? Yes. Yes, it is. You can add logging, is the easiest way. I don't think I'm going to do that right this second, but if I have a few minutes, I may show you. But yeah, if you do a quick Google search for that, you'll find it pretty quickly, I think. Anyway, so this thing takes in an assembly using reflection, and so I can do something like, what's the easiest way to do this? Probably type of, well, I could say actually this app db context dot assembly, right? So that says get me the assembly of this thing. So rebuild now without forgetting it, and basically I'm passing it in the infrastructure assembly, and that infrastructure assembly has the to-do item configuration in it, and so it should work. So with that, I'll just create another migration, and the only change in it should be, well, no, let's just start from scratch. So we'll just delete. The thing about migrations, you can always delete them anytime you want, and Visual Studio disappears. Okay, so we'll do that, and we'll run this migration script again. The other thing I recommend, if you do create these migration scripts like this, they're like 3 lines long of command line, copy that and paste it into a README file or something somewhere so that you've got it, so that when you run it the next time you don't have to figure all that out. Alright. Is it doing something? There we go. Maybe. Boom. Alright, so now it reran them. Now let's see what it did. Now, look at that. Max length is 100, nullable is false. So by passing in the assembly, it actually worked. So it does work, but only if you pass in the assembly, right? But the name of this thing is from the current assembly, so you shouldn't have to pass in the assembly. Okay, so what I want to do is modify my extension method over here in this file right here, so that it will automatically use the calling assembly. And there's a few ways to do that. The trick that I'm going to try and use is get a reference to the method that's calling me. and I'm going to lean on Google to find that for me. So C# method get calling method. And there's a way to do this. A couple of them actually. You can use color member name is one. And if you use color member name, you put that on a parameter that you'll then get. And within there you can specify what that is. Not sure that's going to be what I want though. The other way is to do the stack. So reflection stack get calling method class. So that's really what I want. How do I find the method that called the current method? And so there's a stack trace that you can get access to, and then you can get the get frame, get method, whatever, and this goes up the stack up one. So this should get me the method that I want. Alright, so something like that. And if I have the method, I need the reflection. So control dot use system diagnostics, and then get method dot declaring type on that method dot assembly. Right, that should do it. And what do I do with that? Well, this is var calling assembly equals that. And then I can do something with that calling assembly. And so let's look what we have here. Assembly to use equals the assembly or assembly to get executing assembly. So the problem with this get executing assembly is the executing assembly at this point is my EF core extensions assembly. That's not what I want. So I want to take this and stick it right here, I think. And then tell this guy to use the calling assembly. Does that make sense? Does that look right? So I think that's going to do it. Now I want to test this, and unfortunately the easiest way for me to test this is to copy paste this project into my other solution. So let's just create, and really it doesn't matter as long as it's in a different assembly. So let's take this whole class, model builder extensions, and let's just drop it over here into my core assembly. We'll add a new class. Call it model builder extensions. And put this right here. Oh shoot. Copy it again because I'm an idiot. I hit Control C instead of Control V. And there we go. Alright. Now I need to mess with core because it doesn't have any dependencies on EF, but let's see, install that. I would never do this for real, but come on. I wouldn't want to add a reference to EF core inside of core normally, but just to test this out, this is a throwaway. Find and install the latest version. Just do it. Alright, we need link. We should be close. We need reflection, or diagnostics rather. Alright, now. Is it good? It's good. Okay, so now I need to give this some namespace, like clean architect.core.ef extensions, let's say, so that I can be sure that I'm using that namespace. And then in appdb context, I want to get rid of my Ardalis core extensions and try this thing without anything. And it's going to say, which one do you want? Ardalis or does it? It's not. Should give me an option. Let me build. Right. Ardalis EF core, it's not the one I want. I want you to be using this. So we'll just do it by hand and see if that works. AppDB context right here. We're going to say using this namespace that I think it should be in. Now it works. I don't know why it wasn't finding it for me. Okay, so to test this, what should now happen is this should actually pass in the right assembly. Can you make a project reference in the solution? Yeah, totally. There's already a project reference. So if I right click on dependencies, add reference, I've got a project reference right now. That's what it's already using. Alright, so without passing in the assembly by hand, I should be able to get rid of this migration. Okay. And I should be able to run my migrations here. And the build fails. Of course it does. Why would the build fail? Build succeeded. You lie. Do it again. Okay, no idea why the build failed, but don't care. Alright, let's look and see. Yes, look at that. It actually worked. Alright, so that tells me my fix was correct. So let's do a couple more quick things, and then let's commit this and create a new NuGet package, which is my ultimate goal, so that you guys can all use this in the wild. I don't have any unit tests for this at the moment, but let's add a new solution folder called solution items, and let's add the README file here so I can easily edit it in here. This is our sample usage. This will do what it says it does, and then we can say apply configurations in a different assembly. Would be something like what we had before. So let's get our documentation right here. So let's say I wanted to apply the ones from core. I could say type of to do item dot assembly, like that, and put that in here. Type of like that. I think there might be a generic way to do this instead of type of, but this works. Alright, there's that. And then let's say down here to test run migrations. I don't want to lose my migration script I did, so sample migration script to add migrations to a clean architecture. Solution template is shown here. And then we'll go steal my code that I've been using here and paste it in here. Run here. Run from the solution root. Alright, perfect. Now let's go find that link that I wanted to clean architecture. Not project. I don't know what you're asking. What does not project mean? None of your business. I don't know what you're saying, dude. Right there. Clean architecture. Boom. That should work. Alright, I'm going to save that. And let's go over here to get cracking. EF core extensions. Show me my work in progress. VS Code settings. We can ignore that. Alright, README file looks good. Extensions looks good. Adding fix for current assembly. Let's go ahead and stage all these things. Stage all changes. There's one other thing I need to do before I push this up, and that is modify this version. I think this is a whole update to 1.0 or 1.1. So let's say it's 1.1. And what did we do? Package release notes. Fixed issue with using current assembly. For what? For that. Let's see. No. Fixed issue with that when not passing an assembly. Sounds good. Alright, now we'll do another quick commit, stage, adding version info. It's used for about, oh, the joy of programming, thinking it's a normal command for Twitch. Oh, right, yeah, you got it. Did it work? No. Wonder why that's not working. So I've got this here, I can see bang project. Yeah. I don't think I have the bot installed that has all the support for those commands, so I need to do that. Maybe I'll do that today. Alright. Thanks, John Olson. I forgot about that command. And I think, so I'm using Chatty here, and I think I would not see it. I might not see it here if it actually worked with the bot picking it up. Or at least I'd see the bot answer it, and then I wouldn't be confused. But anyway, let's commit this. Let's push this. Let's go out to the EF Core Extensions repository. It should be at the top of my list. And theoretically, this thing should do an EF pipeline thing. I think I might have to create a release, though. Do I have this set up to automatically deploy, or did I do it by hand? Release. Yeah, I do. I do have it set up. That's from 722. So I need to do something to make that work, if I remember right. So that's not it. Let's go back. I think I have to create a release. I need to document this for myself. 0 releases. Maybe it'll just work. Alright, 1 minute ago I pushed version info. Let's see what this does. There should be a build here. I picked it up. Alright, so let's see if this works. This usually takes about 1.5 minutes, so it's not too long to wait for us to see if this works. I have some of my NuGet package projects set up so that I have to actually manually create a release, and that's what's used. That version number that I use on the release is what will trigger the release in Azure DevOps. So let's see, that finished, so now the release should pick it up. There it is. Picks it up. Now I think this one is set up to just automatically try and push to NuGet, and as long as it's not a duplicate with the version, which I just set in the project file, it should work. Maybe. We'll soon know. Sweet. Alright, check that out. Alright, so now I can go out here and go back to my Ardalis EF Core extensions, wherever that is. There we go. And if I sign in, I'm signed in, it should show me that. There we go. So it's still validating. You folks can't see it, but it did work. So yay, step 1 is done. So that was the first thing I wanted to do today, is get that bug fixed. So we did that. Now I don't think I actually put that bug as an issue on the site. So let's go. Let me just get a new tab back to GitHub. Swag EF. There. Did I create an issue for it? No, did not. Alright. So good. So if somebody else wants to do this issue, feel free. But but we'll say we're done with EF Core extensions for now. Except that I'll probably add EF Core extensions to some other projects at some point. So, but not today. Alright, so the next thing we're going to look at is the specification pattern. And specification is another NuGet package that I've got out there. And let's open that up. So I don't need this anymore. I don't need this anymore. So you're saying I didn't save the solution. Oh, because the solution items. Fine. I'm going to save that out here too. Dang it. Stage. Okay. Added solution items. Commit. And normally I'd do this in a branch, but this thing's so tiny I'm just throwing it in master for now. Okay, so we'll say that's done. I don't need that anymore. Specification is what we're going to look at next. And then this one, sure. Okay, so let's do this. I don't think, there it is. Ardalis.Specification. What I'm trying to do with Ardalis.Specification is get these integration tests to run in a container and on the server. I've got them working in a container, I just don't have them yet working on the server. And on the server, I mean in the build pipeline. So the thing about specification, let's do a little quick background here. I have an EF repository that's a generic repository in this, well, for now it's in this test, but in many of my projects that I write, I have this thing. In fact, to show it, let me do this. Let's go out to this Microsoft sample that I work on. I already referenced this eShop on web. Alright, so in here, in the application core, there are several specifications defined. And a specification is just an object that represents a query. And it has a name, which is nice, and it's very reusable, and it's very testable. And you can include not just query details, but also how much data to pull back and whether or not to do paging and how to cache it and things like that. So if we look at the customer orders with items specification, let's say, there's a where clause represented by this lambda expression that says, you know, find me all the orders such that buyer ID equals the buyer ID that's specified, and include, using EF core, the include statement, the order items off of order, as well as order item dot the item ordered, which is a product, or a catalog item, I think. So you can do includes, you can do nested or chained includes as well here. So then what does that look like when you use it? Well, there's a single generic EF repository here that takes in a specification for operations like list and even count. And so when you call this list async and you pass it in that specification, it calls this apply specification method, which is down here at the bottom, and it uses the specification evaluator. And all it does is use this iQueryable to build up the query. So the input query is your DB set of whatever, DB set of order, let's say. And it says, okay, well, let's make the query be query.where, the criteria. And then let's say query is including all the things that you're including. And then you can also do order by and group by and yada, yada, yada. And when you're done, you get this query back. And now we are back inside the context. And we're right here. We just applied that specification and built up our DB set query. And we just do a .toList on it and call it. So it's a good way to keep that query detail from basically polluting the rest of your application. So if you've got a bunch of lambda expressions and where clauses in your controllers or in your services, and there's duplication and complexity all over the place inside your ASP.NET Core app, specification pattern is your friend. It'll clean that up. You'll have a nice short and sweet catalog of specifications that you can define and reuse, and also they work really well with caching. So for folks like John Olson, if you're still here, you're worried about what's the performance of this like with the database. For a ton of stuff that you're going to do with your database, it's cacheable. So even if it's not the most performant query method that you're using, if it's read mostly data, which is a lot of data that you end up using, if you cache it, it's going to be about 1,000 times faster than if you actually have to go to the database and get the data. So I would spend more time looking at how to do caching efficiently and effectively and correctly than on trying to tune how you talk to the database and how you do SQL in most applications. There are exceptions, of course, but it's everything's a trade-off. All right. So what I'm trying to do with the specification package is I'm trying to take this base specification here and all the things that it includes and pull that out into something reusable so that you don't have to copy paste this code out of the sample app on eShop on web in order to leverage it in your app, right? And so it's already out there in NuGet, but one of the things about the way this works is that I can't just test it with unit tests because I can't test include statements with unit tests. Include statements only work with the link to SQL or link to entities rather, SQL provider that EF Core uses. So because of that, get rid of some namespaces there. Because of that, I want to be able to run my tests in my build pipeline against a SQL database. And so what that looks like is I have a sample client here in this integration test project, and it has a sample DB context, and it creates this model with some test data in it. So here's my has data. I'm going to populate it with this stuff. And I'm going to say blog with posts specification here. Says I have a blog with posts, and I'm using caching with it. We'll look at that later. Do you have some good learning resources about caching in core? I do. I recommend using a cached repository pattern primarily. And if you search for that, with me, you'll find a bunch of articles on it. And one for ASP.NET Core looks like this. And in addition to showing you that pattern, it also shows you just how to do caching in general. So if you don't want to use the whole repository pattern, you can just steal the bits that shows you how to use the cache, which is pretty much this. Cache.get or create something. Alright, so there's that. Caching is cool. You should check it out. Alright, where was I? In here, we're trying to write tests. So here's my spec. I want to write a test for that spec. And I want to verify I can talk to the database. And did I ever get around to writing the test for this? Yeah, I'm on the integration test thing. Here's all these specifications. Where's the tests? Okay, here we go. I see. Alright, I put them all inside of one file. That was confusing me. I'd probably split these up into different things. Okay, so we're going to try and connect to this database right here. And notice it's got this SA password. For any real database, you should never ever do this. But this is using Docker. And there's a Docker container that is a SQL Server database running in Linux. And when you configure that Docker container with a Docker file, one of the things you have to tell it is what is the SA password, because that's how it works. That's how you connect to it. Alright, so where is that Docker file? I think I need to add that to, oh, there it is. Okay, I was going to say. Alright, so this is my Docker file. So if you haven't used Docker, Docker is a really nice thing, and I don't have the time or the expertise really to do it justice here in this stream. But essentially what this is doing is it's going to create an image in which to run my tests. And that's all this one's doing. So this from command says, what should I use as the base for the image I'm going to use? Any special reason you don't use an in-memory DB? Yes. I can't test include EF Core's include functionality with an in-memory database. If I use an in-memory database, any navigation property will always be there, right? So when I look at this blog, and this blog has a collection of posts, if I fetch a blog from SQL Server and I don't tell it to include the posts, this will be null. That's how EF with SQL Server works. If I fetch it from an in-memory database, this will always have the posts because they're just there in memory. And so you get different behavior with in-memory or with SQL. And for a lot of the times you don't care, right? So you can write a bunch of tests that don't care about that and they work fine. But in this case, the specific thing I want to test about these specifications is whether or not they include things correctly, right? And so when I look at my sample specification and I have a blog with post specification that says it should include the posts, the only way I can test that is if I actually have a real database. What? Didn't know that? Yeah. In-memory is not the same. So there are differences. Okay. All right, so now let's go back to the Docker file. So this Docker file is going to build and run my tests that are right here. And so here's where it just literally copies everything in this entire structure into the container. I didn't finish saying what from was. This is saying what base image I want to use. So my base image is one Microsoft provides that has the .NET Core 2.2 SDK installed, which I need. So I'm going to start from there. And then I'm going to run this other command here to go get this wait command and then chmod it so I can execute it. So this wait command we'll get to in a second, but basically what this does is it lets me spin up a SQL server in another container and then wait for that other container to be responsive before I run my tests. If I didn't have this, what would happen is I would spin up the two containers, I'd run my tests, they'd run immediately, and they'd all fail. And they'd say I couldn't connect to the database because the database doesn't come up instantly. All right. So then all of this stuff says run the wait command first, and then run the .NET test command, and by the way, pass all this stuff to the test command. So it's saying I want to have logger, I want to have a results directory of var temp, that'll be important in a minute. I want to collect code coverage because I want to see that in my test output. I'm going to use coverlet, I'm going to say cobertura, which is a code coverage format for that, and I'm going to take and move, which is copy. I'm going to copy the unit test coverage file into /var/temp coverage unit, and I'm going to do the same thing with the integration test coverage file. Notice these have the same name, coverage.cobertura.xml, so I have to rename them as this move process. I'm going to move those here to coverage integration cobertura.xml. All right. So when I'm done, I'm going to have two files if this works. Right? I'll have a unit test coverage file and I'll have an integration test coverage file, and I can combine those two into a single test coverage report that'll give me an accurate view of what my test coverage is for my project, combining both unit tests and integration tests. All right, so then Docker Compose is the other piece of this. So Docker Compose is a way to run multiple containers together. And so Docker Compose, I have a tests container that's going to use the Docker file I just showed you. So here's the Docker file right there. It says Docker file, use this Docker file. And it's going to wait for various hosts. In this case, it's going to wait for the database on 1433. So this environment variable wait hosts is used by this wait command. Okay, so when it runs /wait, the way /wait knows what to do is it looks for an environment variable called wait hosts, and it starts pinging it to see if it's responding. And so wait is going to sit there and say, you know, am I getting a response from 1433? And every second or so it's going to ping it again until it finally wakes up. And when it wakes up, then wait is going to terminate, and the next process, which is going to be my tests, will start to run. This volume here is how you can map stuff in the container to stuff outside the container. So I'm going to map my local test results file on this actual machine to the var temp folder in the container. So that's how I'm going to get to the test results. And then this depends on the database. So it's saying the database has to be built and run first, and then the tests will run. But that alone isn't enough to get the behavior I need. I still need that wait in order to make it so the tests work. All right, so then the database image is pretty easy. I don't have any code for this. This is just going to literally pull a container off of, in this case, Microsoft's container registry instead of the Docker registry. They have their own. And it's going to be an MS SQL server running on Linux SQL Server database. And I can say whatever password I want it to have. In this case, it's going to be that super secure password. It's in clear text. It's SA. It's doing all the things you should never ever do with a production database. But this database is only going to exist long enough for my tests to hit it, and then it's going to get thrown away. So this is not really a secret that I'm adding to source control. It's just like part of the configuration of running my tests. Okay, so all of that to say now I've got this run test batch file, and let's go ahead and go to, can I get there? Let's open this in File Explorer and come up to here. That's the right place, and open PowerShell in that folder, and then see what we got here. Here's my runtest.bat or runtest.sh. All right, so run test is going to say Docker Compose build, and then Docker Compose up, and then abort on container exit is going to shut everything down as soon as the containers exit. So when the tests fail, or sorry, when the tests complete, it's going to shut everything down. So drum roll, please. Let's see if this actually works. So I don't think I've run this on this machine. So run tests.bat, and you must start Docker. Why is Docker not started? That was anticlimactic. All right, Docker. Remind me later. All right, so Docker needs to do its thing here for a minute. Thought it was running. It's a good time to pause. Anybody have any questions about anything I talked about? And I forgot to say thank you, John Olson, for the follow, and Trey, Junya, thank you as well. Appreciate it. I was in the middle of talking and blew right past that. All right, so Docker is in fact running. It's hiding now. I don't want it to be hiding. So let's fix that. So over here, if you want to add things to show up here, you can say select which icons up here in the taskbar, and then come down here and tell Docker that it should always be there. Slack should probably always be there. Where the heck is Docker? Docker desktop. There we go. Alright, so now I'll actually see it when it's not running. Karsten, I noticed on your update async you set the whole entity to modify. Doesn't this mean that all the properties are updated instead of dbset.attach entity? Maybe? I don't remember. I'd have to look at the SQL to remember. I set that up a while ago and it works, so I haven't looked at that code in a while. dbset.attach entity, that works. Attach only updates changed properties in SQL. That might be worth changing, honestly. So yeah, so I would look into that. If you want to, this stuff's actually all on this eShop on web. So if you want to throw a quick issue out there with that, I'll definitely take a look at it. And if it does do what you're saying, I think you're right. We probably should use attach. Does attach also do navigation properties? So if I save an order and I tell it attach order, and I also added an order item to the list of items on that order, will it also do an insert statement with that? Yes? All right, good. Then I don't see any reason not to do that. That sounds like a reasonable change. Okay. Now Docker's running. Let's see if this works. All right, so this will take a moment because I have to actually download these containers, which apparently I have run this before because it didn't take very long. So now it's actually launched everything, and the SQL database spits out a lot of stuff. So all this stuff here is the SQL database dumping out things. And now it's running my tests. So over here on the left you see tests 1, that's the tests image. And you see it ran the tests. And somebody was asking, hey, can we see the SQL? I think that was you, John Olson. If you were quick, you saw the SQL spit by here. So let's look at this. I'll jump up to the top in a moment. But we finished up. We've got 100% code coverage, which is nice. And aborting on container exit. So it finished up and it stopped my containers and the database, when it was done. So this actually worked beautifully. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's scroll up to the top and talk about what it did for a moment. And then let's get on to what I actually want to get done today, which is to do this inside of the build in Azure DevOps. All right, so way up here we started. And we built the containers. This is when I run Docker Compose build, it'll rebuild the things. The reason that's in the batch file, and I don't just call Docker Compose up, is the Docker Compose up will not rebuild the containers if I make changes. So as I'm testing this thing and I'm changing how stuff works, or even if I'm adding tests, right? Docker Compose up won't see that I added another test. It'll just run the container it already built previously. So I want to rebuild it. This has a little bit of performance impact because sometimes I didn't change anything and it's still going to rebuild it. But this is how I make sure that it picks up changes. And then after that is done, it will run Docker Compose up, which I don't see, but it should be in here somewhere. There it is, right there. Docker compose up, and that starts running the containers. So it says start this database, and then recreate the tests. And here you can see the tests launch right away, even though they depend on database. And right here is what wait is doing. So wait is seeing, okay, host database not yet there, not yet there, not yet there. And then this is database 1 logging out, and it says here I'm going to start running. I'm going to do all this stuff to show that the database is launching. And so at some point we get down here, and test 1 will notify us right there. No, right there. Test 1 says, hey, the database is now available. So now wait drops off, and we actually start running the tests. So we're going to run .NET test. And so we'll see .NET test output intermixed in here with the other stuff. And so here's our .NET test command starting to run, and there's a few other things up here, like, I had to do a build, and so here's a warning from the build saying such and such likes an await operator. Okay, so then it runs the unit tests here first, and I don't have very many unit tests, but they cover whatever percentage, because I've got test coverage turned on, and they drop this out to this coverage cobertura file, and then we run the integration tests, and now this is where we're going to see output from EF Core. So here's an example of where I'm going to run a query. I'm going to say select, here's my relational query model visitor from blog in dbset of blog, where this ID, order by this, and grab the blog, and where's the actual SQL at? This is the expression. Here's the SQL. Okay, so if you want to see what the SQL looks like, it's going to say select these various things from the post table, interjoin with the blogs, order by the ID, right? And that's doing with the include statement so that it has the posts and the blog, I think. It's hard to tell which of these queries goes with which thing, but you can definitely see the output of the queries here, right? And when I run queries that are just fetching a blog and they're not fetching its additional posts because I don't have that include statement, then it's going to run a query that looks like this, and it's going to just say, hey, get me the name, the URL, and the ID off the blog, order by ID, right? That's like, give me all the blogs. When it looks like this is what it generates when it is going to actually include the posts. All right. And that is, I think, pretty much it. Let's see if the test results actually showed up for me. There's some other queries. That's rather verbose. There's probably some things in there I could think about cleaning up or fixing. But the nice thing is that it worked. And when we're done, we get this output that went there. And then it should have created a test results folder for me, which it did right there. So let's go look at that. Test results, and there is a coverage.integration and a coverage.unit test result in there that I can then merge together using a tool called Report Generator. All right, any questions about that? Now let's talk about why this is not working on Azure DevOps. So let's go back to specification, and here's my Azure DevOps pipeline. Let's look at the Azure pipeline in Visual Studio. Do I have it there? I don't have it there. Add another solution folder, Azure pipeline, and we'll add existing item. Hey, main L, thanks for the follow. Azure Pipelines. Alright, so here's what my Azure Pipeline looks like right now. And it's doing some stuff to show me what version of .NET is running. It's going to install NuGet. It's going to build the solution. Well, it's going to restore everything to the solution with NuGet. Then it's going to build the solution using .NET Build. And then I wanted to list the folder contents because I was debugging and diagnosing what the heck this was doing. And then here's where I want to run all the tests with coverage, but instead of running them manually, I want to just run my run test script. Right now, this is running on a Linux container, I believe. Yeah, this is running on Ubuntu. And the reason it's running on Ubuntu is because I want to use this Docker container, and this Docker container depends on this Microsoft SQL container, and since this uses Ubuntu, I've got to use Ubuntu. So that's a requirement there that ended up stymieing me a little bit, because I got this all working just fine on Windows, as you just saw, but then I'm trying to get this part working. Alright, so script, we're going to run the test script, and then I shouldn't need this. That should already be part of that, right? I don't know, let me see what run test to sh does. Let's add it here. Add existing item. That. Yeah, it's the same thing. So maybe my syntax is wrong. Well, let's run it and see what happens. So let's go out to Azure Pipelines. Here we are. Let's go look at builds. And that's from a week ago, and that actually looked green. So did that work? Run Docker, run test script. I seem to recall this not working. Alright, so let's see what this did. Pull the database. Database is not available. Let's get to the bottom of this. Maybe I got this working before. Look at that. That looks very similar to what I have locally. So that part's good. So I should have some tests. What I want is a code coverage report right here. And that's not there yet, obviously. So copy publish code coverage reports. There were none. Alright, that's not good. Generate code coverage reports. Get coverage.sh. How does a container that generates the XML files know how to put them in your file system? President not sure one. How does a container know how? Oh, okay, I can show you that. Alright, so the files, let's go back to the Docker file. The Docker file says do this, right? And then this ampersand says do this next thing after that. So then it's like and run .NET test, right? And after .NET test is done, move this file to /var/temp, alright? And then after that's done, move this other file to /var/temp, right? Now look at Docker Compose. /var/temp is mapped to test results. And so anything that it moves to /var/temp shows up in my file system in test results because it's mapped. And that's done by Docker Compose. You can also do it from a Docker command line. But Docker Compose makes it a little easier and more reusable. What if the container generate the ebook and put it in your file system? I don't know what ebook you're talking about. Alright, so get coverage. Where's get coverage at? That. Oh, I didn't even run that locally. Let's see what that does. It's been a while since I looked at this. Get coverage. What do you do? File does not exist anymore. Loading report, loading this other report. Analyzing 3 classes. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, it looks like it's close to working. Using report generator. But that does not work in Azure because it's not creating that report file that I want. Not sure why it's saying these aren't working. Code coverage. Alright. So there should be a code coverage folder now, which there is. And it should have this stuff, which it does. So if I look at base specification, it's here. And it's saying I've got 100% coverage. And maybe Where's index? There's index. Alright, I can look at EF. It won't show me that file there. Alright. Oh, I know why. Because it's under /app, but only in a container. I wonder if I need that. I probably don't need that /app in the container. Let's get rid of that and see if that fixes this problem. Workdir /, and then anywhere else I have app, I'd have to pull that out. So that becomes that, and that becomes that, and that should be everything. Alright, so we'll save that. Go back here. Run the tests again. Oh, you're saying generate this report in the container and then pass it back? Okay. Yeah, generally these are just done as HTML because then the HTML can be shown on your build server. Yeah, so my tests all still work, so that's cool. So that worked. Let's see if the coverage report works. No. Wonder why. Now it says /source doesn't exist. But let's see, refresh. It shouldn't really be /source, but it should just be source, right? Because it's running from here, and there should be a source Ardalis.Specification evaluator. That should be there. And so it's that / that's messing it up, I wonder. I wonder if there's a way on report generator to tell it what the path is to my types. Alright, I'm not going to worry about that right now. What I want to worry about is here. No. Here? Yes. In my specification build. In my specification build, I want this publish code coverage report to work, and it's telling me no code coverage reports were found to publish. But I definitely have code coverage results, so I think I'm really close. Because I generated that. It said it finished generating. Okay, so I could list the folder content outputs again if I wanted to. I don't think that's really helping me though. Right there. So let's go back here. Let's go to our Azure pipeline. We do get coverage, generates the results, and I'm thinking when I publish them, covertura.xml is not it. The actual code coverage results, do I need to publish the report? Hi Crows 4K. John Olson, what do you think about GraphQL versus REST in a NetCore app web API? It doesn't seem that mature yet. I think you're talking about GraphQL not being that mature. I use REST primarily. I have not used GraphQL much. I won't say that it's not mature or that it's not ready or anything. I'll just say that I'm very comfortable with REST. I know how it works. I'm very productive with it. It solves my problems, so I haven't really explored GraphQL except to watch a couple presentations on it. I haven't played with it much myself. Alright, I have other projects. This is the thing that's most valuable in your life as a software developer, is having other stuff somewhere that works that you can then leverage for what you're doing. So I have code coverage working and publishing somewhere else. Challenge is remembering where it is. I think it's either guard clauses or smart enum or both. I think it's smart enum, maybe. Test passing, that's good. But that doesn't say coverage. Guard clauses, I thought I had coverage. Coverage, there we go. So let's go look at what I did here. So publish code coverage results, that all worked, and it gave me this tab, and this is what I want to see. So this shows me everything in the build results. Alright, so let's look at what guard clauses is doing inside its Azure pipeline. And so it when it says publish code coverage results, it is in fact saying to use cobertura, cobertura.xml, and this report generator has a target directory of coverage, and that maps to that. Alright, so let's set this aside for a moment. I can't actually pull it to another monitor. That's okay. Alright, so my report generator should look like that. Reports, target directory. Okay. Let's do this. Alright, so get coverage generates the coverage reports, and it's hiding it from me, what it's actually doing. So let's see what that does. That. Alright, so reports is test results, this and this. Instead of just coverage.openCover, this is coverage.whatever.cobertura. That's fine. Target directory is code coverage. Report types I'm not specifying. I think I need to specify that. See if that does any better. And probably can add the assembly filter as well while we're at it. Like that. Alright, so now let's push this up and see what happens. So come here, find this. Docker file, we changed that app folder, but it didn't help us any. We're adding that, and we get rid of some things. Alright, so trying to get code coverage working in pipeline. Stage all and commit. Alright, now let's see over here what happens in the pipeline. So we've got a build, and it should pretty quickly now pick up the thing I just pushed, maybe, or I might have to do it manually. I can't because I'm not signed in. Let's see if I can sign in. No, that's so annoying. Microsoft authentication is the worst. Is the quotes correct in get coverage? Probably not. That is a pain. Let's look at that. Karsten. Alright, so there's this double quote, and it goes with that double quote, and it says dash reports, has all that stuff, and then there's this targeter that used to have its own double quote at the end of it. So maybe it's happier that way. Maybe it should be one double quote per flag. I don't know. We could try that. I don't know if it'll matter. But I'm willing to give that a shot just to see if it makes a difference. Did I forget to push it last time? I did. That's why it's not building. Committing it locally is not going to kick off a build in Azure DevOps. Alright, so we just did a push. Now we'll be able to see it here in a moment. Hey, see you, John Olson. Thanks for tuning in. Alright, seriously, you should pick up the thing here anytime now. There it is. Alright. So this blue means it's actually building. And this is the tedious part. Because before I can test, or before I can verify whether or not I get that one little thing right, I have to let it run through all the other steps of this build. And that's part of why I was trying to get it to work locally. So let's keep working on that locally. Can I run SH? I don't think I can run SH from here. No. Yeah, it's not going to work. Let's see, do I have bash? Let's git bash. That's probably not the right one. Where am I? Okay. How the heck do I get to... /C. Alright, fine. Okay. So it doesn't like that filter. Which means probably it'll fail eventually in Azure as well. So where's the filter? There, assembly filters -xunit star. But if I look at the one I've got here, there's -xunit star. So what's the difference between YAML and doing it by hand on a command line? I should be able to just run that report generator command myself. Right, so let's just copy this into here, paste it, run that. Okay, let's just get rid of the filter, run that, and everything works. Dish. Files, these files still don't exist, that's fine. But it created a code coverage file, index.htm. Okay. And last time we looked at that file, it didn't have xunit in it, so that's really fine. Right? Yeah, that looks fine. So I guess we'll just get rid of the xunit part of that statement. Let's see what's our build up to. Still trying to run Docker Compose. Alright, I'm gonna guess that that was a good thing to do, so let's do this. Reading xunit filter, that wasn't working. Commit. Push this time. Alright. Those quotes are no bueno. No, they were bueno. Like, double quote, single quote, double quote. That's perfectly fine, as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't work, but as far as I'm concerned, it's good. Unfortunately, the computer doesn't care what I think. Alright. Single quotes around xunit aren't necessary. You're probably right. That's probably a YAML thing, huh? So that's not it. Whatever I was looking at before this, those single quotes are part of YAML, not part of the command line. I'll grant you that. I'll bet that's correct. So let's go there and get rid of that and that. You think that's good? There we go. Yeah, it likes that better. But hey Eric, how's it going? But I don't think it mattered anyway because it wasn't actually doing anything with the XUnit files, so I think it was okay on that front. Alright, so skip the nupkeg file. Well, that's probably fine. Warning though. Tell me what the warning is. Is it blank or is it slow? Alright, this is the one I want to know about. And Azure DevOps is not giving me anything. That's not good. Let's refresh this thing. The build was manually deleted by TFS just now. Oh, well, thank you, TFS. Why did you decide to come in and manually delete my build that literally just finished? The heck is that? You guys seen this before? That's weird. I guess it decided this other build was going to be better. Alright. Docker compose up, generate code coverage reports, run the publish. Let's review this code again and see if it looks right. Azure pipelines and get coverage. Let's look, what is this doing? This is my input, integration, and unit. My target directory is code coverage, and I'm going to try and create cobertura. So when we look at Azure Pipeline, we look at the publish code coverage results. We're going to look in the code coverage folder for cobertura.xml. When I run that by hand, there's a cobertura.xml file there. Yes, there is. So it should be able to find it. And if it works, I should have a code coverage tab that appears here at the end of the build. If TFS doesn't decide to just nuke the build without telling me about it. Do I use ReSharper? Crows4K wants to know. I used to be a big fan. I have found that the later versions of Visual Studio actually give me most of the things that I needed ReSharper for day to day. And as I do more and more presentations and Pluralsight videos and things like that, I was always having to turn off ReSharper so that I wasn't showing stuff that most developers didn't necessarily have. And so I learned to live without it. It has a better test runner still, I think, although Visual Studio has gotten much better. And it does have some refactorings that Visual Studio still doesn't have. Like, I really would like it if, here's one that gets me all the time. I can, let's go here with this author class, right? I can say, you know what, let's make that author 2. I can say control dot, and Visual Studio knows how to rename the author, and it does not necessarily rename. I'm pretty sure I can just try this. Let's do it. I don't think it renames. Did I do it? Rename type to author 2. I don't know. Did it do it? Let's try it again. Author again. Whatever. Do you give me a rename option? Yeah. So I can rename it to whatever goofy thing I just called it. And over here, it doesn't rename the file, right? And that just bugs me. And now it should detect, ReSharper will do this. You should detect, hey, this doesn't match. So I can come in here and it should be, hey, rename the file to match, and it won't. Now sometimes if I rename the file something else, then it will, let's rename this back to author. Then it'll prompt me, like if I come over here and I say, hey, rename this file to author 2. Then it might say, oh, I see you're doing this. Would you like to rename it to author? Like, yeah, okay, but you know what? I don't normally want to mess around in Solution Explorer. I like to mess around in the code. And so I wouldn't want to do that. I'd want to come here and say control dot, and there should be an option here that says rename file to author, because it doesn't match, and there isn't. There never is. So that's one I miss from ReSharper. Control insert over here to add types is also really nice in ReSharper, as opposed to add new item. So there's a few things I like about ReSharper that I miss, but mostly I'm good without it. And if you want a bunch of additional refactorings, there's a free extension called Roslinator that you can get. So let's see what this did. No results were found. Full of it. All right. So Roslinator, if you want, is over here, and it's this GitHub repo with all kinds of stuff. And there's an extension for Visual Studio you can install for 2019 or 2017. And with this installed, you get a lot of stuff on top of what you already get with Visual Studio that makes it really nice. Oh, I see, Karsten, what you're saying. You have to save it first. I don't think you have to do that in ReSharper. So again, there's some things. ReSharper is nicer in a lot of little things, but the big things they have added over the years. So like the one I use a lot is dependency injection. So when I come into a service, I don't really have a service. Let's just pretend this is a service, right? And I come in here and I say I'm going to make a constructor, and I'm going to say this thing takes one of itself, like this, and I can say control dot, and it will generate a field for me called builder and assign it. Like, I do that all the time. And if you're doing dependency injection all the time, it's a real hassle to have to type all that stuff out by hand. And ReSharper's had this support since 10 years ago. And Visual Studio in the most recent versions has added support for this refactoring, and so I use it all the time. And that makes it way less painful to use Visual Studio. Alright, so in the code coverage, when naming for XML, but in the XAML use a different name. I might be wrong. You use one naming. Alright, so in code coverage SH, I say coverage integration, cobertura, target directory is code coverage, format is cobertura, and when I run it locally, we can see, there it is, cobertura.xml, right? Hey, Crows 4K, thank you for the subscription, I appreciate it, that's awesome. Use one naming, so get coverage, use one naming, but in the, okay, so then in Azure Pipeline XML, when I go to publish it, there's code coverage, so my source directory, code coverage, cobertura XML, and my report directory is the same place. I suppose I could put that somewhere else, but it never gets there, right? It doesn't, oh no, sorry, it's the publish that fails. Yeah, this is the publish, right, so there's the summary file, there's the report file that has the XML. Report directory. Let's go look again at the one that works. So the one that works looks like this. Let me unpin that, put these side by side. So this is in my script, and this is code coverage tool, cobertura, code coverage tool, cobertura. Source summary file location is wherever it is that cobertura XML is. Source directory, and over here we said target directory is source target reports coverage, source target reports coverage. Mine is just code coverage, so just code coverage. Build sources directory, code coverage. Alright. Code coverage, report directory. Okay, let's see if I can do this trick here to get a directory listing of what's in that folder. So display name list, code coverage folder contents. Build, that's artifact staging, what's sources? Sources directory / code coverage. Let's see what that does. I want to see what's there. So we're gonna push this up and stage troubleshooting report publishing commit. Thank you for the awesome answer. What was my awesome answer? Oh, do I use your sharper? Yeah, no worries. JetBrains is great. Support them if you can. I have my own reasons why I don't necessarily still use it. So, okay, so we push that up. We should be able to see now another build kicking off. Did I push it? Push the change. I did that already. I didn't forget this time. Where is it? There it is. Alright, I got about 15 more minutes to stream today, so I'm hoping I can get this working. I'll be really excited if I can get code coverage results showing for this. Because I first started working on this like before I went on vacation in the middle of July, and then it didn't quite work, and then here we are. It still doesn't quite work. It's one of those things. And all this stuff is open source, so if any of you want to play with it, like this Azure DevOps stuff is all free. You can add it to any GitHub project. You can fork my project and set it up yourself, try and run it, see how all this build stuff works. I mentioned in the stream notes that I might try and look at GitHub Actions. I have got those set up with another one of my projects right now, but they didn't give me any template, so there wasn't a lot there. And by that I mean, when you create a new Azure pipeline, it'll ask you, like when you create a build, like what template do you want to use? And you can say, I want to build an ASP.NET Core app and test it. And it'll give you a YAML file with those steps. When you do that for here, which I did, in my EF Core, was it EF Core extensions? I think it was a different project. Yeah, but here you can say, I want to set up this simple workflow, build and test your C# repository. I thought that sounded like a template, right? These other ones look like templates too. And when you actually set up this workflow, it literally does this. It just echoes hello world. It doesn't do anything. So I don't think they're quite there yet with the the C# template. At least for Node and these other ones, it actually like installs stuff. But yeah, for C#, it's not quite there. Karsten, you mentioned I should add PR on GitHub. Could you post a link to the repo on GitHub? Yeah, that's the eShop on web one. So here's the issue list, and here's the link. And if you go there and add an issue and mention the stuff we talked about, either Eric, who I think is on here, you still here, eFlam, or I will take a look at that. If you want to be really nice, you'll include like an integration test or something that verifies that it does the wrong thing. But if you don't do that, it's cool. We'll still test it out and fix it. All right. So let's run this. Just Eco, thanks for the follow. I appreciate it. I'm going to try and get back in my regular every Friday routine. I had to take a few weeks off, but we'll see if I can keep this up now. Okay, so this is the tedious part of doing stuff with Azure DevOps, is that you have to keep iterating, and it takes minutes, depending on how long your build is, to run each time. We just want to get to here. Maybe a fix for the change tracker I noticed in your test. Karsten, which change tracker is that? Is that the same thing you're talking about? With attach versus marking it as changed? Or you got something else you noticed? No need to have change tracker active always, only on save. Are you talking about in the specification one I'm working on, or on the EF, I'm sorry, on the eShop? Maybe the eShop tests would run faster if we were not using change tracking and say ASNR tracking on some of those tests. Is that what you're saying? Because that would be a minor performance improvement for our tests. I could see that. Not found directory code coverage. That's not helpful. Let's see. This one it found just fine. It's directory contents. Not sure what directory that is. Oh, it's the staging directory, artifact staging directory. Okay, so artifact staging directory is this temp folder, I guess. Hey, Calvin. Notice your test output change tracker is always active. Yeah, that's probably true in almost all my integration tests everywhere, because I don't usually turn it off. It doesn't make it slow. It does make it slower, but not it doesn't make a big difference. If you profile change tracking, it's like 1%, performance improvement. So it's definitely a thing we could tune, but I don't think it'll make a big difference on like how long these tests run. And the problem is if you forget where to turn it on or turn it off, and you suddenly run an integration test that needs change tracking and you turned it off, then you're going to have tests that don't work for no apparent reason. So I'd be a little worried about that. But as long as you had it like in a base class or something, maybe it'd be alright. Alright, why is this not working? I'm here, and this works just fine. So working directory is that. But this build.source directory code coverage does not work. And I think it should. This is all about grabbing things from /test results. Maybe this needs to be /code coverage. Like that. And dot should be the source directory, shouldn't it? I would think. Maybe not. Working directory. Well, let's just back it up to there. Well, let's do a couple directories. All right. So let's just get the directory of the sources directory, and then we'll try and get the code coverage one again if by some miracle I just fixed it. Alright, so now let's take that, stage everything, troubleshooting, still, commit, push, running out of time. Pick it up. There it is. Okay. So now at the very least we'll see what is in that sources directory and where the heck is code coverage getting put. Because like I said, it works in that other project. And I had this working before using Windows containers up to the point where it needed to switch because of the SQL Server thing being a Linux container. Because you can't run Linux container off of a Windows build agent. Even though I can run Linux containers just fine on Windows here on my desktop, Azure DevOps won't let you spin up a Linux Docker container from a Windows build agent. And so here I am trying to get it all working in Linux from my Windows box. All right. I probably should have changed the label on one of these, huh? They're just meant to be thrown away. Alright, so here's where we're going to run the tests. The nice thing is the tests all work. The other nice thing is once this functions, I can copy paste this Azure pipeline file to any other project where I want to run integration tests with SQL Server. Hey Eric, speaking of that, we may want to run integration tests with SQL Server for eShop on Web at some point. So we may want to pull this in for that project. I'll just push it over there and tell Eric to figure it out. Alright, we're so close. What folder is it dropping the code coverage stuff into? That's the only thing I don't know. Alright, I think this will be my last build that I can run on the stream. But if I get it working, I'll talk about it next week. And maybe it'll be obvious what the problem is as soon as we see this folder contents. That's the hope, anyway. Does anybody know if there's a way to see, without having to do this list folder contents, is there a way to see the folder structure of one of these build agents somehow? Some better way? That doesn't look good. Login failed. I wonder if some of our tests are going to fail. Right, exactly, Calvin. Alright, that's interesting. I saw a login failure, but it ended up working. Alright, this one succeeded. Alright, so I don't want .NET info. Go away. I want that one. Right? So this is my root. That's where it should be. And it has get coverage, readme, test results. Oh, it does not have a code coverage folder. Which is why it can't find it. Okay. That's interesting. So if I run this locally, let's come back here. If I go in here and I delete this code coverage folder, and then I run this report that we keep running, will it not create a code coverage folder? It does. Look at that right there, code coverage folder. So maybe I'm just not running that in the right folder. But if I'm not running it in the right folder, how is it running at all? Previous task. Script contents. chmod. Is it actually running it? It chmods it, but I don't think it actually runs it. Maybe that's the whole thing, is it's not actually running the thing. No. Here, chmod, and then, right there, run it. It's not running it. Command, starting command output. Do you have permission to make folders? It makes a test results folder, we saw that. Like, that folder shouldn't exist unless it created it. I don't think. So I don't know, Karsten, but I think so. It seems like it's not actually running my script. Alright, here's that. Seems to be like it's on the same line as this. Right? Shouldn't that be a separate statement? Or maybe an and? Maybe that's what I need. Is the script something like that? Perhaps? Maybe it doesn't support multiple lines? I don't know, I don't use the script command very much. But I wonder if that'll make a difference. I really don't think it's running that script at all, and that's why we aren't seeing the output. Can you add two separate script sections? Yeah, I could totally do that. And that might be an option too. I thought, so I could do this, and do another one here, and have this one just be that. And this would be like set execution permission. Right, like that. We could try that one too. They should generate separate builds, so we'll just stage them both. Fix line 76. When did I do line 70? Oh, thanks. Better. Could you add a script step in your deployment? What do you mean? Like, I'm not going to have any test output if I don't run the tests. I suppose I could bypass all the Docker stuff and I could just run some unit tests and get some code coverage that way, and that would be a lot faster. Because right now, this Docker bit takes 3 minutes, and everything else takes less. But setting all that up and running a separate script that runs my unit tests and gathers coverage, that would probably take about a minute. And I keep hoping that this will be the last time I have to do it, honestly. So, we're after 2 o'clock now, so I need to wrap this up. I'm going to let this run, but I'm going to let you guys go. Yeah. It's always like, maybe this one will fix it, maybe this one will fix it. And at some point you're like, alright, fine, let me do something that lets me diagnose faster. Because, yeah, the feedback loop on these builds is just horrendous. Once I figure out why that script's not running, which apparently it's not, then I can figure out if that coverage file is being created correctly, published correctly, and as soon as that publish works, then everything's happy, right? Then things will show up, and there'll be a code coverage section right here. Yeah, just one more. That's why developers don't come to bed. Like, I just need to try this one more thing. I'm gonna get it. Just one more thing. Alright, so I'm going to go. I'll let you guys all have a good weekend. Let me figure out who's on streaming right now that I can raid. Usually Clarkio is around. So let's just do a quick raid on Clarkio. He usually appreciates that kind of thing. If you guys haven't seen him, he's always working on fun projects. His stuff tends to be a little more fun than mine, a little less business focused. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Clarkio, there he is. He's got 61 viewers already. Man, he should raid me sometime. And we will do that. So I will hop over there and say hey. And if this actually ends up working, I'll let you all know. And then this stream will be up on YouTube here probably later today. Talk to you guys later.